Malcolm and Marie was written and directed by Sam Levinson and stars John David Washington and Zendaya. It's this really low-budget independent film that was actually shot during COVID. It was one of the first to really shoot, wrap up, and finish and release during the pandemic era. And to get straight to the point, this movie really pleasantly surprised me. Not only do John David Washington and Zendaya just absolutely knock it out of the park, which was expected, the phenomenal script is what really kind of kept me interested in the movie. These two characters are kind of just arguing about one night. It takes place in real time. Like, I think the movie's an hour and 40-something, and it takes place over the course of an hour and 40-something. And the way that this movie was able to maintain pace, keep the audience attention, to where I was always engaged, I was never bored, and I couldn't look away. Actually, about halfway through the movie, I really had to pee, and I didn't go or leave my seat because I could not stop watching the movie. Like, I wanted to get to the end of the movie. In terms of, like, specifics, I think one of the best things this screenplay does is it reveals exposition in a way that's very unique and creative. Ask any screenwriter, they'll tell you one of the hardest aspects of it is when you need to convey information to the audience in a certain number of time without it seeming too direct, on the nose, or cheesy. And this film does it phenomenally. It actually disguises exposition as something else, and then it's later revealed to be exposition, and it's so well written. The dialogue of the script is phenomenal. When I was watching the movie, it reminded me of a cross between two 90s Kevin Smith movies. It reminded me of like Clerks meets Chasing Amy in a way. The Chasing Amy element just being the scenes in Chasing Amy, the scenes between Ben Affleck's character and Lauren Adams' character. And, the arguments that they would have, the dialogue and how real it felt. This movie has that, and it reminded me of Clerks a little bit just because of the black and white photography and just the overall looming presence that the movie had. Both are apparent in this film. The movie also does a really great job of presenting you these two characters who are just flawed people. Characters who are very narcissistic, characters who are kind of want to be the center of attention, but also bring up valid points in their arguments, and they're just really good at arguing. And the movie kind of toes the line of, is it about winning the argument or is it about this relationship? And it really gets you to care about these characters, but it also doesn't tell you to pick a side. I actually found myself jumping on who's right and who's wrong throughout the movie of the argument, and it does a great job of, when the movie starts, you're like, really? That's what the whole argument of the movie is going to be about? But then, as with every argument you have with somebody, there's layers to it, and there's more than what's actually just being brought up. The cinematography of this movie was stunning. I loved how the film looked. And the editing is actually what really stood out to me because, when you have movies where it's going to be an acting showcase, you really want to be careful to not fall into the trap of, oh, well, this could have just been a really nice stage play. And, the mistake that some filmmakers make is they just shoot it as if it's a stage play and let the actors go. Well, it really utilized tools of filmmaking. I mentioned the cinematography, but the number one thing that this movie really had going for it for me was its editing on a technical level. The editing of this film was phenomenal. It knew exactly when to cut, when not to cut. There are very long sequences in this movie, long one-take sequences where you're just lingering, or not even just lingering, but moving back and forth, and like the mood of the scene changes with what room the camera's going through. It really, really spoke to me. This movie moved me a lot. I was actually very shocked, because I was fortunate enough to see this in a movie theater. The movie theater I saw it at made a deal with Netflix to show it early, which is why the review's up when it is. And when I came out of the theater, I was talking about it with Hannah. We both saw it, we both loved it, and then we go online and see that critically it's actually very divisive. Which is funny because a huge point in this movie, a huge topic of conversation is film criticism. Even film school students will get something out of this because they mention stuff that you learn week one about film criticism, and it was really interesting because while that point in the movie was also just revealing the narcissism of the character who is complaining about a nice review, it also just goes to show that it kind of knew what it was doing, and it knew what it was going to be in terms of divisive. It asked questions about the nature of film criticism and its true subjective nature of what it is, and I thought that was very fascinating, and it shows just with the critical response to the movie. But I thoroughly love this movie. In terms of flaws, the only issue I really kind of had with it is there are points in the movie where, in terms of the dialogue, it's very great, like the things they're saying to each other, But there are some points in the things where they're saying things that are so horrible that it eventually goes into my mind where it's like, all right, I would just leave. Like if I was in that argument, it doesn't matter if I was like trying to win, I would just leave if it got to that point. But, you know, obviously it's a movie and, you know, your suspension is, you're in the suspension of disbelief, and I didn't really think about that until afterwards when we were driving home. But honestly, it seems like a nitpick at this point because, you know, I loved every other aspect about this film, and I really, really think you'll enjoy it too. So please watch it on Netflix when it comes out tomorrow. I'm going to give Malcolm and Marie an A+. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.